Well, welcome everyone to Talking Textiles. I'm Joey Smith, member of ATA and chairman of USINFI and director of sales and business development at MMI Textiles. The goal of this podcast is to get to know a wide variety of positions and markets that can be advanced through the textile world. Today, in particular, we're focusing on the importance of advocacy in influencing government relations and other policies through the perspective of the U.S. Industrial Narrow Fabrics Institute. On today's episode, we will discuss the USI NFI Advocacy Days recap that took place during the first week of March and the Outlook Leadership Conference taking place June 2nd through the 5th at Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Joining me today on the podcast will be ATA members Mark Harries. He's the vice chairman of USI NFI and president of Bally Ribbon Mills. Chad Twombly, board member for USI NFI and vice president and director of sales at Herculite Products. Sydney Price, board member of USI NFI and technical sales manager at Graniteville Specialty Fabrics. And Matt Clark, president of W&W Associates. Let's talk some textiles. Hi, I'm Joey Smith. Today, myself, Mark Harries, Chad Twombly, Sydney Price, and Matt Clark are your featured guests. Welcome to the podcast. What I wanted to just kind of start with, we're going to talk about the Advocacy Days first. I'd like to kind of go around and talk a little bit more and get some more ideas from everybody. But in the beginning, I just wanted to kind of give a quick recap of the 2-day experience that we had. And we talked a little bit about this on the previous podcast, but the first day we all came into Washington, D.C. We had introductory meetings with each other, got to meet a lot of new people. This year we had 19 people that were in attendance. The states represented for us were Illinois, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, Virginia, and California. We definitely had some more traction within different states that we've not been represented in a long time. And out of those 19 attendees, we had 8 new attendees that actually came and participated. So we're continuing to grow and strengthen our presence within the industry and USI NFI. And we're going to look to continue to grow that in the future. The more states we represent and have represented, the more outreach and the more we can discuss our policies that are very important to our association and our industry. During that day, we also had meetings with USTR, so that's a trade representative group, and OTEXA, which is another trade representative group under the U.S. government, basically outlining a lot of the policies and talking points that we wanted to talk about through different military talking points, trade talking points, and just really giving our feedback of kind of what's going on in the industry, how we're seeing our business. Obviously, they're trade representatives, so we talked a lot about the tariffs that were going on and how that really impacts our business. And then the second day was really kind of hit the pavement. So we all went into the Senate and congressional buildings and had meetings with our representatives that were associated with the states that our companies are associated with. I listed those out earlier. And so it was a great day. I will say that it was the day after the congressional speech by Donald Trump. There were a ton of people, a lot more people than normally there. And I think that was more so related to a lot of people trying to get their last minute dig in for the appropriation of the new budget that recently got approved in the Congress and the Senate. Everybody's trying to get a little bit of a piece of the pie there. So, but it was a great day. We had great meetings. We really did talk to a lot of different congressional and Senate representatives, whether that be the actual representative themselves, their staff. We did talk to the Finance Committee and other committees as well, just to talk about different trade issues, things related to the Berry Amendment, things going on with DLA spending and things like that. So that's kind of just your basic recap of the first couple of days. I'll kind of open the floor to Chad and Mark because they've done this before. I wanted to kind of get their perspective on how the 2-day process went for them. And then after that, I'm going to hand it over to Sydney and Matt, because I think it's super important that we get them, some of the newbies on this podcast, and talk about, what was the experience like for them, and how did they feel about their representatives they met with, and also the topics that were discussed. So Chad and Mark, I'll kind of turn it over to you guys, and you can talk a little bit about your experience.
Thanks, Joey. This is Mark Harries, President Valley Road Mills. I just wanted to say thanks for having me on. And then also, I thought it was a good meeting, like you said, despite my first impressions of it through our meetings were despite how busy everyone seemed, everyone I met with spent more time with me this year than any other year that I've done it. They let us talk as long as we wanted. And in some cases, say, hey, you have anything else? Hey, you have anything else? And it never happens. Usually it's like, okay, thanks. I gotta go. Next meeting. But they really seem to be very interested this year. And I think it's just because of the new administration, all the changes going on. They really want to get a handle on what everyone thought and is thinking and what their businesses are doing. So they really spent a good amount of time with us, which was really nice. Another point I'd like to say that happened this year, which, for anyone who's planning on doing it or maybe is doing it, I had two people from Baylor, myself and another vice president. And sometimes you don't get to pick when the meetings happen. So, and it happened this year specifically. So I was glad I brought two. Now, do you have to bring two? No, but I was glad I brought two this year because one of the Pennsylvania senator's office said, it can meet at this time. And that was the same time as I had a meeting with my state rep or the Congress rep, a US rep. So we were able to split up, and I went to the congressperson. Ted, my VP, he went to the senator's office, and we got to do both meetings, where if it was just me, kind of would have had to pick and choose. So sometimes it is nice to have more than one person as backup, not only just when you're talking with them, but also when you're going about, and make sure you have enough coverage. But those are my initial impressions. Chad, how was it for you?
Great to see you, everybody. Thanks for being here. I think it was a great session I've attended. Like Joey, we've been to, and like Mark, we've been to several of these. I think this is my sixth or seventh time. My only point bringing that up is that it was great to see so many people. I think it's the largest group that I've seen representing our industry in the last 6 to 7 years. Great to see some new people jumping in and getting engaged. Good conversations. I agree with Mark that seemed like everybody was really receptive. Obviously, a lot of crazy things going on in Washington right now. I think the Congress and the Senate are trying to figure out what exactly their role is going to be in all of this, and how they can inject themselves into participating, in some cases participating with the Trump agenda, and probably in some cases resisting it. But nonetheless, I think everybody was really willing and ready to hear from us, and we were able to share some important topics. But really, just to be brief, the biggest takeaway that I have, it was just great to see as large of a group as we had, and get some participation from folks that we hadn't seen in some time, and some new people. So just really want to commend everybody for their commitment to it, their attendance, and I think we were very effective.
Yeah, thanks, Chad and Mark. Really appreciate your perspective on that. Before we kind of get into the topics, like I said, I wanted to turn it over to Matt and Sydney just to get their initial impressions on how the preparation went, how before the actual conference or advocacy day started, how it went the first day when we were doing some meetings and talking some more preparation work and talking to USTR and OTEXA, and then how your meetings went with your congressional leadership that you met with. So I'll hand it over to Sydney first, just to get her opinion, and then I'll have Matt follow her up.
Yeah, thanks, Joey. So this is Sydney Price, Technical Sales Manager at Graniteville Specialty Fabrics, and first-time attendee. I was very intimidated going into the whole event, having never attended before, and no one who's active in our company who's been before as well. But I've got to say that my expectations were completely blown away, that it was just a great event and planned very well. It was not nearly as intimidating as I thought it was going to be. And the USINFI group did a great job at educating everyone before the event with the podcast that came out before this and the webinar that was given. I thought the education before the event was really good. The first day, the meeting that we had, our consultants, Augie Tantillo and Sarah Beatty, did a wonderful job as well, just recapping everything and answering a lot of questions that we all had. So I felt very prepared going into our meetings with the U.S. senators, our South Carolina senators, and our Congress House representative. I think that the majority of the people that I spoke with were very interested in what we had to say. I wouldn't say that was the case with every meeting, but that was not a surprise. That was made a clear expectation going into it. So yeah, I mean, I'm really glad that I had the chance to participate and advocate for our company and let these staffers know, how these policy changes affect our business. It's really important to us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sydney, for that perspective. Matt, how about your initial thoughts and how it went during your meetings as well?
Well, first off, Joey, thanks for having me on. It was a really great couple of days. That first day, Sydney just recapped it beautifully. The ability to sit down with the U.S. trade rep and with the team at USNFI or USINFI, really kind of establishing, hey, this is what we're focusing on, and this is what we're advocating. I knew a lot of the topics that we were talking about, and I knew how they're affecting my business, but really to have that background of a lot of the things of why these were in place and how they're being utilized in a negative aspect for our business was like, oh, okay, I didn't understand that. So having the webinar, having the meeting beforehand, before we went on the Hill was, for me, valuable. And with the meetings that we had, I would say overall were really well received. A lot of the reps and the staffers, as we talked about it, were very on board with, yep, Barry member, great. Yes, we are fully on board, made in the USA, talking about de minimis and realizing that. It was one of the reps specifically that I was talking with, he said, we were talking about how especially the Far East and China were breaking up shipments to stay under that threshold and literally, taking one PO and breaking up into 4 or 5 different shipments to stay underneath. And he was like, really? That's what's going on? And he had his staffer, he said, take a note. I want to find out more about that. So it was really great to see that the staffer was like, okay, take a note. Hey, I'll follow up on that. So overall, it was really a great meeting. And the funny thing is my wife and I, we have a facility in California. And so we are actually flying from D.C. And one of the congressmen that I was there was on our flight. And so I went over and talked to him, and then he had a couple other individuals, and he's like, oh, by the way, this is Representative Levin, and this is Representative Dan Issa from California. So I was able to do an impromptu meeting at the airport because they were asking me, what did you meet with about Representative Vargas? And I said, oh, here's what we talked about. Here's the things. And getting their perspective. We're headquartered in states that are more blue states. And it was interesting talking to Representative Issa, who's a Republican out of California in the Inland Empire, really agreeing with Representative Levin and Representative Vargas of, hey, these are major issues that we need to look at. So I thought there was good bipartisan support for a lot of these issues. So the meetings I thought were fantastic.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Matt and Sydney, for that perspective. I think it goes a long way just to show. I agree. I think initially a lot of people get a little flustered or nervous about doing this and the gravity of the situation and meeting with these very important people, but they're just people. And I think the big thing is that you're going and talking to either their staff, or I had the opportunity to talk to a couple of congressional members, Max Miller from Ohio and Virginia Fox from North Carolina. Had some really great meetings with them. And it's one of those things where it's just sitting in a room with people and saying, hey, look, man, these are the issues that we're having, giving real life examples of how it really affects your company and what needs to be done to try to fix these things. I want to talk a little bit about just from my perspective, and I'll open it up after this to you guys as well. But really, the 3 big things, obviously, Barry Amendment, everybody's supportive of that. So I really don't think that we have a lot of challenges there. The three big things that I talked about and that were major discussions were de minimis. There is in the NDAA, there was language in the 2020, I guess it would be 25 considering the fiscal year, but last year's NDAA where Congress gave DLA the option to buy additional stock inventory to help for any kind of ramp up that goes into an incursion with a different country. So basically getting more supplies, helping out the textile industry and granting them funds if they need it. And this year we were really trying to get that language changed to where it was mandated that was going to be in there. And then tariffs. I'm sure everybody knows the craziness that's been going on with right before we kind of got there. A lot of the tariff conversation was more so on Canada and Mexico and how that affects USMCA. But we did talk a lot about the tariffs, how that affects de minimis too. And to Matt's point, if I've got a container load of Chinese goods that are 50-yard rolls that get sent into Mexico because they're trying to avoid the tariffs of probably, I guess it's over 40% now. The big thing is that they can send that into Mexico and ship one roll at a time under de minimis, and they're not going to get tariff at all. So it's really hurting the ability for industrial textile companies to really be able to go into more commercial applications. It's really hurting the apparel industry as well, and we've got to get a hold on that from the de minimis side. So a lot of these things are kind of connected, but I got some really good responses from some people and already had people reach out to us about it. I did do some follow-ups with the people that we met with just to say, hey, I really appreciate the time that you've spent with us and the issues that are affecting our industry, and got really great responses back. And now it's getting to the point where I'm going enough now that some of these people are remembering me and recognizing me before I even go in to shake their hands. Hey, man, I hadn't seen you in forever. That's really what it's about, is building those relationships. And to Matt's point, him running into his congressional member on the plane, you're walking around the halls, and these guys are the congressmen, senators, congresswomen, senators, congressmen, senators. Everybody's, they're kind of walking around too. They're going to the Capitol to vote. They're having meetings with other people and staff. And sometimes you can just do a plug with somebody that you don't even have have a representative there to talk to. I ran into Raphael Warnock a couple months ago. I had some of the Milliken guys with me, and he didn't even know who Milliken was in Georgia, which is crazy to me. So we talked a little bit about some of our issues. Will Cromer and I, who work at MMI, we ran into Mark Walker, who is a congressman from North Carolina and hangs around the Greensboro area, and just said, hey, and here are the things that we're talking about. And he pointed us in the direction of his staff if we needed any help whatsoever. It's really cool. It's a cool process. It's very rewarding, but it's also one of those things where you can get a little bit more done than you think you're going to get done just because you run into people in the hallways. I don't know. That was kind of my perspective and some of the topics that we talked about. I don't know if you guys spent more time on other issues, but those are really kind of the three that we mainly talked about. I'll kind of open the floor up to anybody else that has something to say about that.
I'll speak real quickly on that. I think you covered it well, Joey. This is Chad again. But what I will say is, and really for newcomers like Matt and Sydney and others that would think about attending, Joey made a really, really good point, and that is that consistency is really important. Coming year after year so that the people that you're interacting with do start to recognize you and start to recognize your businesses. And the more often that you come year after year, I feel like the people that I've interacted with become more and more aware of who you are, who your businesses are, and what our issues are. To come once and to make a campaign for something that they might have never heard about before will probably be forgotten. To go year after year and do that, I think is really important for our industry. So I want to thank again, Matt, Sydney, and all those that came for the first time. Great to have you. Look forward to seeing you again next year.
Yeah, thanks you so much, Chad, for that perspective.
I think one of the other topics, I also wear another hat, I'm the treasurer on our fire protection district within our community. So it's an elected position. And one of the other things that is always a big topic, especially in the fire world and also for the military, those that are creating textiles, is the PFAS. We talked a lot about that. Even though my industry, we don't really deal with that because we're dealing labeling and we don't have to worry about PFAS. But from a fire protection, military, we talked about using a targeted scientific approach rather than just banning it completely. I know that the former representative from Michigan had a bill in there that basically was like, hey, we're going to ban all PFAS. And our position was time out. Let's take a scientific approach. And when we were talking to Representative Foster, who represents where I live in Illinois, he comes from a science background. He's a scientist. He's a business owner or was a business owner. And so going to that approach and saying, hey, with the PFAS, we know that there are some that causes cancer, and we are in full favor of banning those completely, but don't do a broad sweeping brush on all PFAS because they are protecting our warfighters, our first responders from the toxics and from oils and whatever they're running into to do their job every single day. And his response was absolutely. I'm 100% of let's look at the science, let's look at the EPA, let's look what they're recommending rather than taking the pendulum and swinging it all the way to the other side saying, let's just ban everything because we know a couple bad companies that let this get into the water. And now it's like we need a total ban on these things. Well, some of those things we just don't have the alternative to protect our first responders and our military warfighters. And so he was very, very receptive. Actually, all of them were very receptive about that, saying, yeah, let's take a look at the science and base our decisions on that. So that's just another topic that we talked about as well.
Yeah, and I'll bring up kind of one other topic that I personally didn't talk about, but I know that it was discussed in several meetings that we had was the MTB, so the miscellaneous tariff bill. That basically is for products that cannot be made, mainly yarns that can't be made in the US. And this is something that was done every couple of years. It was passed with a bipartisan effort, so it never was an issue. And I think it's been 4 or 5 years now since the MTB has been passed. Specific example of that is, Glen Raven and how they procure their acrylic that goes into this umbrella product. But there's a lot of other examples of that too. And it kind of goes back to the trade war that's starting to go on now. I'm hesitant to say that the MTB will get fixed because there's a lot of tit for tat when it comes to the trade wars that are going on right now.
One other thing that we had discussed in one of my meetings, not just saying like the different policies that are affecting our businesses, but also the policies that they have passed that were like, that was great. Thank you guys. For example, the domestic non-availability determination decision from the last 2025 NDAA, where they said that they will create a list of what materials are not available and publish that for everyone to see, and then create a cycle for reviewing those items. We were going in and saying, this is really important to us. We're glad you guys are doing this. And also we need to monitor the progress of this, make sure it happens in the outlined timeline that was set forth in that NDAA.
Yeah, one other thing, I'm sorry I mentioned this earlier, is the SAT, so the Simplified Acquisition Threshold, which is basically contracts, barrier amendment contracts that are below $150,000. We had several discussions about just how we appreciated them going from $250,000 to $150,000 a couple of years ago. I think that there's still players out there within the government that try to skirt that and break up contracts into several different contracts so that they can get under that threshold and really buy from anywhere that they want to if there's a cheaper option overseas. So we talked a little bit about that and how we need to continue that effort to make that less and less as we possibly can. I will say, and I know I talked a little bit about just the craziness and how many people were there. There's been a lot of change based off of the new administration. There's been a lot of just stuff being thrown at the wall And I will say a lot of these senators and congressional people and their staff, they're really walking on eggshells right now, trying to figure out how to fix some of these things that are going on now. And then, like, okay, well, what's going to be the next thing? Because there's always this next thing. And I think that that's why it's really important to have this consistency with the amount of people that we have going, trying to grow this not only with new individuals going, but new states being represented. We had a handful of states, and I would say that there's a lot of textiles in the Southeast and the Northeast, and we had North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, and Virginia. Outside of that, it was Illinois and California. Where's Georgia? Where's Florida? Where's Alabama? Where's Mississippi? Although we did have somebody from Mississippi that wasn't on here. So I think it's just super imperative that we continue to try to get as many people as we can come to this event. It's relatively inexpensive. You're paying for your hotel and your way to get there. You get a free meal through ATA, but you do have to be a USI NFI member. If you consistently want to go, you got to be a USI NFI member. If you're not a USI NFI member, but you are an ATA member and you've never gone, you are able to go that first year just to check it out and see if you like it. See if this is a worthwhile spend for you and your company to gain access to these people, decision makers, as well as talk about the issues that are facing your company and what's going on and how you can strengthen your business, how you can strengthen the industry, and how we can get better. Please, if you want to, I know we're going to talk more about this at Outlook, and I'll kind of transition into Outlook, but we will be talking a lot more about this at Outlook in the beginning of June up in Green Bay. We'll be talking about the topics that were discussed with these people we met with. We will be trying to recruit as many people as we possibly can. Because I will say, a couple years ago, we had like 7 people. And 7 people going is not a good amount of people to go to represent our industry. It throws off a very bad vibe when you walk in and you only got one person that's meeting with some of these congressional staff and even the members themselves. And then the next group that comes in has 20 people, right? So we've really got to work hard to try to grow this. I will say that I'm very appreciative of the turnout that we had this year, especially the new members. Matt and Sydney, you guys did a great job. I wholeheartedly welcome you guys to come again next year. I think that you realize how beneficial it is for yourself and your companies. And
Yeah, one quick thought on that, Joey, before we
yeah,
jump on to the next subject. Matt and Sydney, anything to say about your experience and the value that you feel like it had for your businesses?
I'll answer that. And from my perspective, it was great to be able just to meet with whether it was a representative of the elected official or the elected official themselves to just say, hey, I'm a small American business. I provide so many jobs to these individuals and they're paying taxes and they're providing for their families. And anything that comes from outside or skirting rules and regulations and tariffs and that thing, that hurts our business. It hurts me. It hurts my employees. It hurts what we're trying to do here in the US. We're trying to grow manufacturing and all of us are. I know I'm a lot smaller than some of the other companies represented, but to have that message of, hey, we're leaders within the textile industry. These are our important issues. We're spending the time coming out and talking to you about these issues. I think it was really important and well received for the most part. Knowing, understanding is how many people do you employ, what kind of business you're in was interesting because I brought a little sample of some of the PVC rubber labels that we're doing. And the representatives were like, this is really cool. How'd you do this? And especially Representative Foster, who was a scientist, it probably took 10 minutes that I went through explaining like our process and everything. And you could see the wheels turning in his head of like, this is really neat. It's an American business providing American jobs, providing American products to our military and to the private sector and whoever. So from that perspective, I thought it was really valuable from a business owner that I'm representing my employees, to grow my business through the legislative process, not just on the sales side, but also through the legislative process of making sure that the legislations that's in place makes sense and that we can continue to grow the manufacturing here in the U.S.
Yeah, that's a great take. Thank you so much.
Matt spoke very well about the value that this creates for our companies. And one thing that was interesting, one of the staffers that I spoke with for Senator Scott's office, he actually is from this area. And one thing that you'll see if you are around our plant is a lot of shut down textile plants. There are probably 6 different mills just within a 5-minute radius that have been shut down due to policies that were made back in the 90s. So I think that it was a really good visit with all of the representatives that we met with, and I'm really glad that we got to tell our story and explain how these different policies affect our business.
Yeah, and to add on to that, one other thing just mentioned before we transition over to the outlook side of things. The other topic that we bring up at the end always is, hey, if you're in the area, we'd love to have you come to our facility. And whether it's their staff members or whether it's the actual representative themselves, it's super valuable for you to have them come to your facility and understand what you do, how many people work in your company, and how these policies affect the things that you're doing. At MMI Textiles, we've been fortunate enough to have Senator Brown last year come and visit us and really talk about the de minimis side of things. I know that the USTR trade reps have done some rounds down in the Carolinas, and I know that other companies have had senators and congressmen and women come to their facilities as well. And that's really important because you're building that relationship with them. They understand that when these discussions happen during these policy discussions, that hey, look, I've got 3 or 4 different companies that are in my district that this doesn't make sense or this does make sense. And that's really something that we talk about prior to when we're doing the prep work, is make sure that you invite these guys to your facility because it really does go a long way and it helps them understand the challenges that you're facing. So, all right, well, cool. I really appreciate all of the feedback related to your experiences and what you talked about. Like I said, I think we need to continue to grow this effort as much as we possibly can, because if we're not there talking about it, somebody's talking about the other side of the story and how they can get their way. So really appreciate the time talking about that. I'm going to transition a little bit over to the Outlook conference. I touched on this a little bit during the opening remarks. Kind of a revamp conference for us. I mean, we traditionally have this in the Carolinas where it's either in the mountains or at the beach. And we did something a little bit different this year. We're going to Green Bay, Wisconsin, and really looking forward to the leadership aspect of this. We're really focusing on the leadership aspect, how we can all be leaders, how we can bring people within our companies that we feel like can be future leaders. We've got sessions associated with those leadership side, as well as industry updates. It's kind of going to be it's a little bit of a different format because normally we come in on a Sunday and leave on Tuesday, but it's going to be Monday through Wednesday this year. The first day will kind of be the same as it normally is. So there will be a military morning. The schedule and payment of attending this conference is a little bit different this year. So normally you would have where you could pay for both sessions, or you could pay for just the military morning or just the industry and leadership side of things as well. This year, it's all going to be one fee. Everybody's going to get the opportunity to come and do that. So, and in that morning with the military morning, we're also going to have another session that kind of has leadership discussions. And I think we've got a really great guy that's coming in, Steve Bowie. I've looked at some of his videos online and some of the things that he's doing. He's going to be talking about the fundamentals of leadership that during the military morning. So if you don't have any ties to the military, this is really kind of just talking about leadership and how it can improve your business. Later on that day, we'll talk a little bit more about leadership. We still have some people that we're trying to get in. We're in the final stages of confirming those. But we will have Augie Tontillo that was with us at Advocacy Days that will go over, the government issues that we've talked about. And Janelle and I will probably be up there talking a little bit about just USI, kind of where we stand as a group and how we can get bigger and have separate discussions on that. Then dinner and these sessions, just to let you know, will be at Lambeau Field. So we are going to have these meetings at Lambeau Field, which is right across the street from the hotel we're staying at. Is a very nice hotel, the Kohler Hotel. And then we will have dinner at Lambeau Field that first night as well. And then, or excuse me, Tuesday night. And then Wednesday, we'll have some additional speakers. And then there is an optional tour that you can of Lambeau Field that you can do either after the conference is over or Monday before the conference start. We're not doing a golf outing like we have traditionally done, but I will say that being on the Outlook Planning Committee, that I'm very excited about this. It's going to be very different. We understand that it's going to cost a little bit more for some people because they're going to have to get in an airplane and get there. But we've tried to offset that with some of the fees, the registration fees, as well as the hotel is a lot cheaper than Hilton Head Island would be this year. So very excited about it. I think there's going to be a lot of interaction and people coming. I think that this kind of shift into talking a lot more about leadership and how to grow leaders within your company is a lot more beneficial than, what we normally do. And we talk about, oil and gas, and then we talk about fiber updates, and we talk about all these things that just gets a little stale. And so we really want to try to make this a more interactive approach this year, talk about leadership. Obviously, networking is a huge part of this conference. So we want to make sure that we get as many people there and network. But I'm really excited about it. I know that the group on the committee is very excited about it. I'll give you a little nugget. We're trying to get somebody from the Packers organization to talk about leadership as well. I don't know who that's going to be right now. I don't know if that's completely confirmed, but it's different. It's going to be at a very cool venue. There's going to be a lot of great people there within our industry and within ATA. And we're really looking forward for everybody to come. I don't know, Mark or Chad, if you have any additional comments just about Outlook and kind of your perspective on it.
I think you covered it pretty well. I always think of, I know you say we're leaning a lot on leadership. While that's true, I also kind of think about it in the way of we're just, I guess, Outlook in the past, has always been very specific about the outlook of the textile industry and very specific to the textile industry. And as we go on through the years, we have a lot of diverse companies now joining. And while we still talk a lot about textiles and it is all textile people, we also are trying to focus with the leadership stuff on just how to be a good business, whether you're textile or not, just how to be a good business and navigate the world, in terms of that and not necessarily just textiles. So it's a chance for everyone to learn a little bit extra and maybe a different perspective on things to become a better business and then a better textile business as well. So that's kind of how I think about it too. Chad, I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, no, I agree. You did make this point, but I want to clarify it. There still will be a lot of that fiber information, some of those critical outlook things, but we're kind of layering on top of that some leadership, some CEO coaching type of stuff, a lot of different things around innovation. Matter of fact, the last thing I want to bring up on this is we're hoping to potentially have another podcast where we might be interviewing one or two of the people that will be speaking, so you can get a little bit of a taste as to the high level of professionalism and content that we're looking at providing. It is going to be very different. We're excited about the difference, like Joey said, and I think that people will be really pleased to see the leveling up of content that we're really striving to accomplish this year.
Yeah, I'm on the planning committee with Joey, and well, you guys. But I think I'm more excited about this one than any of the ones in the past years. I think just the new location, the facilities we've seen. I don't know. It looks really cool. I think I'm more excited about this one than a lot in the past. And a lot has to do with the content too. I think we've done a really good job. ATA and the staff there have done a terrific job of scouting things out and finding really interesting people to talk to and that sort of thing. I really hope a lot of people come and check it out this year. I think they're going to be pleased.
Yeah, and as the world continues to change, we had a session on AI last year. We're starting to focus on new innovative things, to Chad's point, AI, automation, robotics, a lot of stuff that is not just your traditional textiles of these looms make woven fabrics and these looms make knit fabrics and here's these coatings. And it's more so how to become efficient, how to be better, how to run things faster, how to run things differently. We're really focused in on this. We've had a great year of planning for this. I think everybody's going to be very pleasantly surprised. And we're really looking forward to everybody that possibly can come and join. I do want to say, and I touched on this a little bit, traditionally, this is catered to more executives within companies. And the last couple of years, we've really tried to get some younger individuals within companies that are have potential for leadership roles within the company, or maybe even middle management that have bigger aspirations for leadership in the company. And I highly suggest that if you got one or two people coming that normally come, or you're coming for the first time, I would highly suggest trying to bring somebody you feel that is going to be a next shining star within your company that you've identified and said, listen, I really think that this could benefit them, and being able to not only talk about and understand the leadership side of things and how to get better, but also being a part of the networking side of things as well, and meeting high level people within the industry and having those discussions. And that can be a little intimidating as well sometimes, but it really throws them into the fire. And I think that I'll say this, if I see a younger individual coming to Outlook, I'm always going up to them and just introducing myself and saying, hey, this is what I do. What do you do? Love to talk, to chat with you. How can I help? Can I be a mentor to you? What can we do to help you grow within your company and become a better leader? I think, like I said, it's going to be a really great outing. I know the ATA staff has done a fantastic job in planning this. I know that there were some reservations in the beginning about Green Bay, Wisconsin versus kind of where we've always been. But like Chad said and Mark said, there's been a lot of effort going into the planning side of this. I think it's going to be really an awesome time. And I just invite anybody to really, if it's your first time, come. If it's your 27th time, come. It's going to be a great experience, not only for the content that we provide, but the place that we're going to be at. Even if you're not a Green Bay Packers fan, which I'm not as well. You just can't bring a can of spray paint if you're from Chicago and start putting Bears logos all over the place. Or if you're all the ATA staff, you can't bring any purple spray paint and start putting Viking stuff in there. But it's going to be a great time. Super excited about it. I just want to say thank you very much for listening. We're going to continue to do this because I think it's really beneficial for us from a communication standpoint, just letting you know what we're doing. I also want to thank Mark, Chad, especially Matt and Sydney for discussions today. Matt and Sydney, thank you so much for coming and it being your first time at the Advocacy Days. And I think that it benefited your companies as well. So thank you all so much for your input. Looking forward to seeing you soon. And take care. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of ATA Talking Textiles. ATA is a nonprofit association representing the International Specialty Fabrics Marketplace. Learn more about the events, workshops, and webinars ATA hosts throughout the year at textiles.org/events.